G'day, welcome back to the channel. Now we're told that drones pose a really bad threat to airliners. If a drone hits an airliner, well, people are going to die, lives will be lost, copious amounts of damage will be done. So the risk of a drone, even a small drone, a 250 gram drone, the risk of flying one of those near an airliner or an airport is just simply too much, and people have been fined large amounts of money, and we're regularly seeing stories where pilots say that it was almost a hit with a drone, or it was, they see these drones and then they just, death and disaster was averted by just 10 feet. All these headlines regularly appear in the news media. So this I found to be very interesting today. Apparently, an Air Malta flight, which was Ryanair flying for Air Malta, was a 737-800, it's a twin-engine jet, hit a flock of herons on approach to Bologna airport in Italy. And it says here the pilots were able to safely continue the landing at Bologna airport despite damage to the nose, windshield, both wings. And a few herons were ingested into the right-hand engine, which suffered a compressor stall. Post-flight inspection revealed that the left-hand engine was also hit. And here are some pictures that were posted to social media. Look at this. Look at the windscreen. Look at the windscreen of this thing. Now, this is very interesting because there is a blog entry by a guy called Manno, which I've mentioned before in this channel. I'll link to it in the description, where he talks about the risk from drones, and he calls it much ado about nothing. Now, this is an airline pilot who also served in the military as a pilot, and he says the stories about drones being a risk are really overhyped. He says our aircraft are hardened to these sort of things, and he talks about having to fly an entire flight almost with duck guts all over the windscreen, just like this flight. So again, why are we seeing stuff like this, which kind of proves that these airliners are not going to fall out of the sky? We saw the Hudson River incident where there was massive geese, and yeah, that brought the airliner down, but nobody died. We're seeing things like this where the airliner has been hit, both engines in the windscreen all over the place, as you'll see in the pictures. Nobody dies. The airliner landed safely. The risk from a tiny drone cannot even possibly be compared to the risk from flocks of large birds like herons or geese. Remember, drones don't fly in flocks, so the risk is even lower. But you can see here the engine ingested a lot of feathers, and it caused a compressor stall because the airflow into the compressor would have been compromised. But the aircraft kept flying. We've got, look at that, caught up in the flaps there. Carcass of a bird. Now, they say, but if a drone gets stuck in the flaps or the tail section, the plane could crash. Well, look, this happens with birds too, and they don't seem to cause a really big problem in terms of total safety. There's another shot of that. Now, the Daily Mail also carried this story. Of course, their headlines are a little bit more outrageous. Fire shoots from engine. But here's some more shots of the birds. Look, this thing here just completely mashed up. All we've got is a leg and a few feathers. What else have we got here? There's looks like some kind of attitude sensor. Again, bird all over it. It's terrible. And if these things can survive being hit by these big bits of bird, remembering that at these sort of speeds, water is like concrete. You fall from a great distance into water and it's like falling onto concrete. So people say, but these drones are made from harder materials, got lipo batteries and motors. It really, at these speeds, it doesn't make a snot load of difference. There is so much energy that a bag of water like a bird is going to cause just as much damage as some frangible plastic or carbon fiber. So yeah, and here's some flames coming out of the engine as this thing came into land, apparently. Same picture, because these were on social media. It's like, here we go, here's some video. Look at that. Obviously compressor stall, we've got flames coming out the back of the motor because not enough air is going in, but the plane didn't crash. So why would it be that a tiny drone would bring down an airliner when these sort of bird attacks don't cause deaths and destruction? It's in fact, there was a really good comment on here, if I can find it. It says here, however, the risk to human life posed by bird strikes is very low. So if the risk caused by bird strike is very low, why, when we're talking big birds here, geese, herons, why would the risk be so high as to require all this hyperbole that we're getting told about drones? Surely a big heron or a big goose striking an airliner is far more likely to cause an issue than a small 250 gram drone. Yet we're told that these birds don't pose a risk to human life when they strike airliners, but the little 250 gram drone does. And once again, what we're seeing here is the fact that this isn't about safety. This stuff, yeah, sure, we don't want drones flying near airports. We don't want drones crashing into airliners. But the risk, that's the probability multiplied by the consequence. Now, the probability is incredibly low because despite all these sightings by airline pilots, the airline pilots are always saying, oh, we just let hit a drone on landing. Despite all these sightings, we haven't had any impacts with airliners that I'm aware of. So the probability is incredibly small. That's one of the factors in risk. And then what about the consequences? Well, if an airliner can survive this sort of damage, let's go back to these other shots. If it can survive this sort of damage by hitting a flock of large birds like herons, what is the consequence of hitting a small plastic drone? It's much lower. So when you multiply that tiny probability by the tiny consequence, you find that the actual risk is really, really small. So why all this hysteria? Why all this vilification of drones by the media and by aviation regulators when we're seeing this sort of thing and, as they said, not a high risk to human life? I don't know. You work it out. It's not about safety. It's not about safety. I keep saying this. I keep preaching this. This is just more evidence to prove it's not about safety. Anyway, that's my little rant for today, and more evidence to prove that we are being lied to and something needs to happen. Just a shame our hobby is so laid back and don't really care that things are happening, but they're not good things. Not good things. There you go. Thanks for watching. To the comments with you now. Tell me what you think about this. And I'll put links to these stories in the description and a link to that Chris Manno blog that you really should read for a pilot's perspective on the risk of drones. And this is not a pilot who's falling into the ALPA home book. This is a pilot that speaks his mind honestly and openly. And if he says he's not worried, why is everybody else? You tell me. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. You make it possible. Bye for now.
Overregulation is like a tumor. It's killing our hobby. It must be terminated. Now!